go. Nice one. God, right up shallow.
Right up where he's supposed to be. That was textbook. All right, buddy.
Need it, won't come in.
Come here, it's showtime.
Oh, nice one. Power pull down and showtime.
Put the power poles down before I go in the bushes.
Nice one. Nice
Yeah,
little
another
fatty.
big old worm. It's funny, guys, how these worms, you wouldn't think a big worm like that a fish would go after it, but works. Summertime fishing with big worms, that's the ticket, guys. Hey folks, Glenn May here with BassResource.com, and today I want to talk to you about fishing big worms. We're talking 10-inch worms or bigger, such as this rage tail thumper right here. This is a 10-inch worm. Nice big one here. You know, a lot of people don't fish these worms, and it's funny, you know, the theory is big bait, big fish, right? So you would think you'd only catch big fish with this. Well, if you're fishing tournaments or you want to have fun fishing, that means you're not going to catch a lot of fish, you know, numbers wise, but you might catch a few big ones. The truth is, it's a misconception.
There we go. That might have been the one you had. He just spit up something. Just a little guy, but even the little guys love these big worms. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it did. He wasn't going nowhere. Go play. Go play.
These baits, I've caught a lot of 2 and 3 pounders with this. It's funny because I'll be fishing, say for example, a tournament and not getting a whole lot of bites. And I'll switch to a bigger bait like this and get more bites. It's something the fish don't see very often. So don't buy in that misconception you'll get less bites but only bigger fish. I've caught big fish on this as well, but you'll catch numbers as well. It's something to do, especially when you're in a tournament situation. You want to try something different. Instead of downsizing, try going up. You might catch more fish. This throws out a nice vibration. Big baits like this throw out a lot of vibration, makes it easier for the fish to find, especially if you're throwing a little bit dingy or muddy water. It has a nice big profile. I found that these work for the most part during the warmer parts of the year, so spring through fall. Not so much during the winter time. The bass just aren't willing to go after something this big, at least in my experience. But in the warmer months, they can be killer. So let me talk to you a little bit about the rigs that I'm using, what kind of, you know, the rods and the line, all that stuff, and then I'm going to show you how to fish it. So let's start off with the rod. Here is a medium heavy power rod, 7 foot, with a fast action on it. Fast action. Yay. This is sort of your Swiss Army knife of fishing. It's your Leatherman tool, if you will. Every angler, every bass angler should have one of these in his rod locker, if not more. I've got at least 4. It's a universal rod you can use for all kinds of fishing, but it's best suited for worm fishing. So the first thing you might notice is if you've done other types of worm fishing and you have this 7 foot, medium heavy, fast tip rod, you don't have to get a different rod to fish bigger baits. You don't have to do anything different. This rod works just perfectly fine. Paired with it is a bait casting reel. High-speed reels is not really an issue when you're fishing worms, so you don't need to spend the extra money to get an 8-to-1, 9-to-1 reel. If you're looking to buy a new reel for worm fishing, if you already have one of those reels, that'll work just fine. You don't have to run out and get a different reel for it. But if you're looking to buy a new reel, looking to match the equipment just right, anything over, say, a 6:1 to gear ratio to like a 7.5, that's suitable for worm fishing. You're not going to be speed reeling this, so you don't need a high-speed reel. The kind of line I like to use 15-pound copolymer line. There's a specific reason for that. Well, first of all, I've been using copolymer line for 30-something years now. It's a universal line, fishing from heavy cover to light cover. This covers most situations. If you plan on fishing a lot of heavy cover, a lot of flooded bush, timber, that sort of thing, braid's your answer there. And you want to heavy up a little bit more, say at least 25 pound, if not more. Some guys like to go 65. I think that's a bit heavy, but you can use fluorocarbon if you want. I don't use fluorocarbon a lot when it comes to worm fishing. I do in some specific situations, especially when the water's really clear. I do like the sensitivity of fluorocarbon, but for a good all-purpose around type lines, copolymer or mono.
Beautiful fish.
Braid is not a good all-purpose line because if you're fishing in rocks, braid tends to fray and get tore up in rocks. And copolymer or fluorocarbon line tends to last longer, doesn't get as nicked as much in rocks. So that's why I use that as a universal line rather than braid. Now tied with it here, I've got a 3/0 hook, a 3/0 wide gap hook, extra wide gap hook. See that? Now, you would think a big bait you should be using 6/0 hooks or 5/0 hooks, something big, because look at the size of this bait. You know, in fishing this, I've discovered that using a 6/0 hook, I actually got less bites. And I started to downsize, and I got to about a 3/0 and I got more bites. I don't know if that's because it lets the worm move more or what the difference is. I can't tell you, but I do know that downsizing it a bit, I get more bites. I catch more fish that way. Granted, on a big bait like this, you're gonna have fish grab the tail, and a 6/0 hook isn't gonna help you there anyway. Sometimes fish grab the tail, you set the hook and you lose them. That's just how it is with bigger baits. They don't always get it all, they don't always hit the front. But when most of the time they hit the front, they're gonna get that big hook in their mouth. That's a good 3/0 hook, and it's gonna work just fine with you. Paired with it, I've got a 3/8 ounce tungsten weight, tungsten bullet weight. I go 1/4 ounce to 3/8 to start off with. Typically that'll work for most scenarios. I'm fishing a little bit of heavier cover today. I'm having a little difficulty getting it to penetrate it, so I went a little up, but typically 1/4 ounce is where I start, and then start adding more weight as I need to make sure I penetrate that cover. I don't want it to have a real fast drop. The slower drop, the better, so I go as light as I can get away with. I also use a bobber stop. A little bobber stop. I don't know if you can see that, but I use a little bobber stop right there to help peg the weight. See, it's pretty, there you go. Help peg the weight to the worm. Now, the last thing I do, it's a little trick I like to show you guys, is I take 40-pound monofilament line, real wiry stuff. And you just get a big spool of that. Get that in the bargain bin somewhere at your tackle store. And what I like to do is I'll take it and I peg it right through. Now I got the eye of the hook embedded in the worm. So what I'll do is I'll take this line and I'll peg it right through the eye of that hook, just like so. All right. Now what that does, it holds this worm to this hook, prevents it from sliding down when I set the hook, just like that. All right. It's in there good and solid. So now I'm just going to show you. I'm removing it here. Look at this. See how I'm pulling on it. See that? It's not coming down the hook. Nice, huh? So when you set the hook, it doesn't ball up around the hook point. It doesn't slide down, and because it's not getting sliding, a lot of times the worms, they get all tore up here. That prevents them from getting tore up, so it makes it last longer. Nice little tip, huh? Cheap, effective. And for the knot I use is just a Uniknot. I use the Uniknot because I've been doing that for 35 years. I've never had a knot fail on me. If you're comfortable using a polymer knot, that's fine too. I know some of you guys like to use a San Diego jam knot. That's equally as effective. My preference is a Uniknot just because I learned it so long ago and I've never had a problem with it. I've done head-to-head testing with the Uniknot, San Diego jam knot, and the polymer knot, and they're all pretty equal. There's not much of a difference between them in terms of holding strength. So use any of those knots, you'll be perfectly fine with this. So there's your setup, there's your rod, reel, that's how I rig it. Now let's go out and fish it. You don't think these even smaller fish catch? Look at the size of this worm. Look at this thing. You don't think these guys will eat this worm? Boy, he got it. He ate it. It'll work. You'll catch all sizes of fish with these worms. Let's see if we can catch some bigger ones. Jeez Louise. There. All right, to fish this big old worm, what I like to do, I like to pitch. That's just my favorite way of getting into cover like this. You can cast or you can flip if you want. I just prefer to pitch. What you want to do on this is just pitch it in there and let it sink. The first cast I want to show you, the first retrieve, just let it fall all the way, reel down with it so you're following the line, and then let it hit the bottom. Watch as it's falling. That's the most critical thing. A lot of times what happens is when you're doing that, when the lure is falling, that's when the fish hits. So that's the most critical time to watch. Just watch that and reel down with the line, watch that line. A lot of times that lure doesn't even hit the bottom. It just starts to swim off. You'll see your line go off to one side, or you'll see your line bounce or twitch or do something that you didn't do. And if you see that, set the hook. And when you set the hook, make sure you have a little bit of slack in your line before you set the hook. So if you got a real tight line on there, just reel down a little bit, throw a little, it's like a crack in a whip. Drop the rod and then set the hook. What you're doing there is you're pile driving that hook into the fish's mouth. See this bait, see this bullet? What that does, a lot of times if you got a tight line and you set the hook on the fish, his mouth is closed around that sinker, and all you've done is turn his head. You've just, the sinker's hit right up on his roof of his mouth, and that hook is never penetrated. All you got to do is open their mouth and blow it out. All right. A lot of times, if you've done that, if you've caught a fish on a worm and you've brought him all the way to the boat, and then suddenly comes off, and you go look at your worm, and guess what? It looks just like that. The hook never came out. That's what happened. So to avoid that, that's why you throw a little slack in your line and you pop it. When you hit it that hard, that shape of that bullet sinker is going to penetrate his mouth, even though it's closed, and right behind it is that hook. It's going to hook the roof of his mouth almost every time. There we go. Oh God, he's big.
At least he feels like he's big. Nice fish. Nice fish. Come here, you. Do not come off. Do not come off. Come here. Come here. Come here. You're not going anywhere. Big worm fishing, folks. It's not a big fish, but they're a lot of fun. Thank you, little guy. Thank you, thank you. We needed that. There you go. Nice.
So, that first cast, again, you just wanted to let it fall straight down on semi-slack line, and be very careful when you watch that line, let it fall. Now, once it falls, it hits the bottom. What I do is I let it sit there for a second, and then I'll just lift up on the rod and let it drop right back where it's at. Let it sit a second, lift back up, and let it drop back down. I'm going to throw it out here a little bit further so you can see it, because I know I'm way out to the side of the boat here. I'm just going to throw, I got some submerged milfoil right through here. Let it drop on semi-slack line. I'm watching that line. It hits the bottom, great. Reel down to it, lift up a little bit, and let it fall right back down. Reel down to it, let it fall right back down. You notice I'm not lifting the rod tip way up high. Again, that goes back to the hook set. If you've got your rod way up here and you set the hook, you've only got about here to your shoulder to set the hook. The last thing you want to do is when you set the hook, you don't want this rod way back here. You've got nothing. You have no control over the fish. You're bent way over here. You've got nothing left to set the hook on. You're going to lose that fish. So make sure you keep that rod in front of you. Keep it as low as you can, ready to give you as much power as you can to set that hook. power poles. There we are. Most of the worm's out of his face, but the hook, important part's in. You guys, I want you to notice something real quick here. See how that bullet sinker slid down the line? That's why I use bobber stoppers. When that fish hit, that went away from the lure, and you couldn't use that weight to shake the lure loose. That's why I do that. Now that's the first retrieve. The second retrieve that I like to do is I'll just pitch it back out here. Let it fall to the bottom. When it sits on the bottom, I just like to drag it back. So I'll bring that rod tip down and I'll just pull the rod tip with me and let it sit, reel up the slack, and then pull it through again. And let it drag on the bottom, let it sit for a second, and then drag it again. All I'm doing is that looks like a little bait fish, like a sculpin or maybe even, you know, some kind of animal on the bottom that's scurrying along the bottom. And the fish will see that and come pick it right up off the bottom. It's amazing how effective that works. I have a feeling just because a lot of people don't fish it that way, fish haven't seen it and they're used to seeing natural forage do that. So try that out if you're not getting a lot of bites on a worm or any kind of plastic bait. Really, it works for any kind, but just point right at it and just drag it a little bit. Let it pause, reel up the slack, then drag it a little bit. Not too far. Again, you want to bear in mind how much room you need to set the hook. And it's imperative when you get that bite, reel up, get that rod in front of you, throw that slack, crack that whip, set the hook. You don't want to be setting the hook way back here, okay? And then the last retrieve that I like to do, and this works really well when you've got submerged milfoil. I don't think you can see it, but I have it just under the water here. Is I'll swim it through the milfoil or over the top of it. If you got hydrilla, that works really well for that too. Coontail, any kind of this that's just submerged, I'll just cast it out there, reel down, and here I'm just slowly reeling it back, keeping the rod tip about the 9 o'clock position. I might get a little bit higher as I bring it closer to me because I want to keep it just under the surface and let that tail do its thing. It's got a lot of action. It looks like an eel or something swimming through the water. Just cast it on out there. And one of the things I like to do as a deviation of that is if I'm bringing it through and I find an open pocket of that milfoil, then I'll just let it drop right down in there and let it fall. Drop my rod tip and let it just sink. And a lot of times it goes back to that fish biting it on the fall. They'll be in that milfoil and they'll see it, or that hydrilla, and pop it back up and then swim it the way back. Those are really, it's just 3 basic retrieves. I don't get any more fancy than that because those 3 work the most for me. Just bringing it right back through. See if I can't get one more fish. But I promise you guys, if you practice throwing it this way, the only difference with throwing a big worm is your cast is a little bit more awkward, a little bit different. Say for example, pitching it, your release is a little bit later than you normally would on a shorter worm. So you have to adjust your cast a little bit. But that's all there is to it, guys. I hope those tips help. For more tips and tricks like this and for the answers to all your questions about bass fishing, visit BassResource.com.